What is up, everybody? Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. And I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner and 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. Also, I host the only online conversation in the world for dads and fathers that is sponsored by Dove Men Care. It's also co-sponsored by Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization. And as part of that team last year, reached out to over 100,000 fathers around the world. And I'm very excited and very blessed to have that opportunity. As always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And we are broadcasting live today on April 3rd and on all Sunday afternoons. I'd say most, I used to say most, but all Sunday afternoons now, we do this thing called Black Canada Talking. It's a live online event that provides Black Canadians the opportunity to give their takes and POVs on stories that are of importance to them. And also we showcase Black Canadians, and we like to showcase new friends. And this is another new friend we have coming today. Kelvin Nyeusi-Mawazo is an author, illustrator, and owner of a publishing company called Black Sun Comics. They create Afrofuturist, and you'll find out what that means if you don't today. Comics and graphic novels. Their books mix science, technology, magic, and monsters with the timeless sophistication of black and white fine art. So this is what they do. He was born and raised in Toronto. He uses skills he's acquired as a photographer, front-end web developer, and college instructor to digitally illustrate his books and teach others how to do the same through his YouTube channel. He admits this. He says he's a self-proclaimed nerd, lover of science fiction, lo-fi instrumental hip-hop, post-apocalyptic movies, and retro gaming. So let's welcome a self-proclaimed nerd to our conversation today. Kelvin, how you doing?
I'm good. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you here also. How's the day going today?
The day's going well. The day's going well.
Good. And you gotta love the sweatshirt he's wearing. Like, I'm telling you, it is on point. There you go. Hi, Captain. How you doing? That's fantastic. Well, I've been wanting to have you on for a long time. I saw all these other media properties got a hold of you. And I said, well, let's get a Black Canadian media property to get a hold of you. So very happy to take the time out of your positive, productive schedule for us today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Good stuff. Well, as we will always do with new friends, we want to find the backstory. So give us young Kelvin, you know, all those days, and tell us a little bit about the story we don't know as much about as we do today.
Sure. I guess I can start at the beginning. So, yeah. Well, yeah, I was born and raised in Toronto. My parents immigrated here from a very small island in the Caribbean called Anguilla. I don't know. Have you heard of it?
Yes, I have.
Okay, good. Most people haven't.
Well, but I gotta know things, because the more I know, the more I need to know.
This is true. This is true. Anguilla has the best beaches on the planet. And I'm not just saying that because my family's from there. It's the truth.
I'm glad we don't have any other Caribbeans on this, because, you know, there'd be beef with that, you know, right there.
Hey, bring the beef. Bring the beef.
All right. Well, sorry to interrupt. Go on, sir.
So they immigrated here from Anguilla in the late 60s, and then had me in the early 70s. So that's going to date me a bit. Yeah, born in Toronto, grew up in Thornhill, and then moved out east to eventually Pickering, which is where I'm at now. And since I was very young, I've always had an interest in science fiction. I would say my mother is to blame for that, although she didn't realize what she was creating at the time. But we would go to, I remember trips where we'd go to the library. She'd take me and my brother to the library when we were very young. And, you know, when the library is getting rid of their old books, right, they would sell them off really cheap. So, yeah, you know, my mom would get a whole bunch of those. And I remember there's a book about traveling to the moon. And at the time, people had already been to the moon, right, but the book was written before that had happened. So I remember just reading that book and I was just fascinated about, you know, people flying to the moon and establishing colonies on the moon and all that kind of stuff. So it started there. And I think I was 4 or 5 years old when I read that book, and that just stuck with me. And I've always had an interest in science fiction from then. Yeah.
So let's talk some backstory already there. We need some hopefully further explanation with.
Yes,
First
sir.
of all, where did your mother have any interest in science fiction?
No, actually, none whatsoever. Which is funny because
Yeah, how did that? That's interesting.
it's weird. Now she was a voracious reader, right? So she
Right.
read all the time, which is how she got us into books. But she didn't have an interest in science fiction at all. In fact, she hated it. Yeah. Um, so I remember once I was watching something. I was older at this point, as maybe Aliens, something like that.
Right.
But I was watching it on the TV, and my mom happened to come into the room just as the alien was ripping someone to shreds. Some disturbing, graphic, nasty scene, and she's like, "Why are you always watching this foolishness? Why do you keep watching this scary foolishness stuff?" And I'm like, "It's just what I like." So no one in my family other than my brother had an interest in science fiction. So I don't know. We're the oddballs. I'm not sure how it came about.
So in school, did you focus on science at all when you were younger?
Yeah, sort of. That's a good question. I gravitated more to anything that was creative, so I like creative writing.
Right.
I know when I was in high school, I was the guy who was always in the science fiction English courses,
Sure.
right? I was always interested in that. But I had a passing interest in science, but I wasn't really built that way. It's more on the creative side, the
Sure.
imagination, the imaginative part of it. Yeah, so
Right.
that's kind of where I stuck. Yeah.
That book that you read at 4 years old, do you still have it?
I don't.
Oh,
I wish I did. And I was looking on the internet to see if I could find it, and I can't. I know what it looks like.
Yeah.
So if I saw the cover, I could recognize it, but I don't remember the name of it. I just remember what it looks like. So that's unfortunate.
That'd be so special if you had that book, because
Yeah,
that's the start of the journey, so to speak.
exactly.
Wow. So your mother recognized your interest in science fiction at a young age. Was she supportive of it? Or was she going like, where's this you going with this this science fiction thing?
That'd be option number 2.
What did she want you to be?
Well, no, it wasn't like she was opposed to it or anything. Like neither my mom or my dad were opposed to it. I don't think they understood my interest in it. Why does he like this stuff? Like it didn't make sense to them, but they were cool with me watching it and consuming it and all that kind of thing. So that was fine. They just didn't understand the interest. Did I answer your question? I kind of rambled there for a bit.
No, you did. You're just doing absolutely fine. In your schooling, like high schooling, etc., did your love for science fiction elevate while you were going to school, or did it elevate after you left school?
It was already elevated by time I went to school because the interest was already there. So I read the books, and then I got into things like Doctor Who and all sorts of any kind of science fiction property, intellectual property that you can name. I've probably seen it. So
Wow.
From a young age, I was always into that. So when I got to high school and they had a science fiction English course, I was like, what?
Bam.
Really? They do this? I'm in. So I signed up for that immediately.
Nice.
And, there I am in the class with a whole bunch of sci-fi introverted nerds like myself. And, it was a great time.
I would, if you have any memories of that class, were there any other Black individuals in that class?
No, I was the only one. I was the only one. Yeah. And that leads into why I do what I do, because although I had a grand love of science fiction and fantasy, the Black representation in it was not up to par. It's not what it should have been. And actually, to this day, it still isn't. There's still a ways to go. But you sounded like you're going to ask.
Yeah. Something. So did you recognize that fact even at a young age?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Even that book that I spoke about, the Going to the Moon, that book, whatever it's called,
exactly.
All the characters in it were white, right? Like every single one. So even as a kid, I don't think I would have been able to verbalize it at the time.
Sure.
But in my mind, I'm like, how come there are no black folks in this book? Like, it doesn't, like, what, we just don't exist. So that was always something that I'd recognized, even though I love the genre so much.
Okay. When did you start creating content for comics?
That's a great question. So when did I start, like, professionally doing it, or just?
No, just the start of the creating content for comics, because
Oh,
where you are now, there had to be a starting point. And
yes.
obviously, so I'm very interested, I'm sure our audience there is, where did the creating content for comics and the thought process come to start doing comics?
For as long as I can remember. I can't remember a time in my life when I wasn't drawing comics. I know my brother and I would always be drawing stuff. You know, I'd make a little 8-page comic and he would read it, and then he'd make an 8-page comic and then I would read it, and we just kind of do that. My starting point, no one will ever see.
But you have it though, right?
But well, yeah, I have.
Okay,
it's funny. I
good,
was speaking with my brother the other day, and he goes, "Do you still have those comics that we made?" I'm like, "Yeah, there's some here in the basement." So we're looking at them again. So that was fun.
How much do we need to pay you to get access to that?
No one's seen those. No.
So you like that as people saying you're not. There's very few pictures of me with hair. So if people, so that's our lock and key content.
There we go.
Right?
There we go. Some things need to be secret. You know, some things need to stay a mystery, and you know, it's all good. So I've been making comics for as long as I can remember.
Wow.
And it started very young, and a lot of those I still have and look back just to kind of see the progress. But I look back and I'm fond, and at the same time I cringe because it's like, what were you thinking? But you know, you're a kid, so
Yeah.
it's just getting that expression out, and eventually it leads to bigger and better things if you keep at it.
What was the moment, if you can remember, that doing the comics for Hack Around, or just doing around for a personal thing, where did the moment come for it to be a bigger vision?
It started in high school. I remember me and a few friends tried to do something, but then it just never popped off. You know, you get distracted easily when you're a teenager, so that never happened. When I went to university, there's a few things that I started and kind of stopped and just didn't follow through with it. And I guess it wasn't really until about after my son was born in 2013. Maybe he was around 3 years old. Yeah.
Sure.
That I said, you know, I've had these ideas kicking around in my head from since I was a kid, and I'm not getting any younger. Let me just do something. Because part of it is the fear of putting yourself out, right? Like, you know, these are ideas that you hold, you know, they're close and dear to you. And there's that fear that if you put it out, people are going to make fun of it and reject it, and you know, you're going to feel bad. But I'd reached a point in my life where I was like, I don't care anymore. Whatever you do, there's always going to be haters. It doesn't matter what you do. So
that's right.
It doesn't matter. Just do it. And if people like it, and my mindset at the time was like, you know, do it. If people like it, cool. If people don't like it, it's still cool. At least I've done it and I know what happened, right? I don't want to be on my deathbed saying, I wish I had done this.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and did it. And I didn't look for a publisher because I didn't want to be told no. I don't like people telling me, no, you can't do something. And so I put my own money into it and self-published, and luckily it got a really great response, an excellent response, and that's still happening now.
Excellent. I always like to celebrate success, and I always like to ask, what was the process? So from the time that you said, I'm going to put Black Sun Comics out there till it became a reality, what was the time period? And if you can, I want to actually have you break down the steps that you had to take to get it out, because a lot of people don't realize how important process is.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The process took a long time for me to kind of nail down, because even though I was a fan of comics and I was drawing comics the whole time, my drawing style is more cartoonish, more like something that you would find in a humor strip, like a comic strip, something like that. And the story that I wanted to tell was a serious story. So I knew that my art style drawing wouldn't match the type of story that I wanted to tell. I couldn't draw the way that I was picturing the images in my head, and I couldn't draw that. So I started looking for alternative ways to do illustrations, which is where I got into the 3D aspect. So at first I started drawing it, and I was like, I'm not happy with this. I don't like the way it looks, so I scrapped that. And then I remember I had read a book a long time ago about, this is the time when webcomics were really popular, probably like the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s. And there was a book on webcomic artists and their processes. And there's this one artist in there that used this software called Poser, which, you know, you load 3D models, you create 3D characters and you pose them, and, you know, you create your frames, your comic panels that way. So I was like, oh, let me check that out. Right. And I did a search online and I found Poser, and another software came up called Daz Studio. And Poser was, I think, $300 some odd at the time, and Daz Studio was free. So I said, let me use Daz Studio, because I wasn't really sure what I wanted. Part of the reason why I went this route as well is because I didn't want to hire an artist because I wasn't really sure what I wanted. And I know if I was working with an artist, they get frustrated with me very quickly because I'd always be changing my mind. So I said, let me see what I can do myself. So I found Daz Studio, which is a 3D character creation and scene creation software. And that just clicked. It instantly clicked. And I got really into that. I started using that to basically model 3D characters and then render 2D images from that. And then I was already adept at Photoshop because I had a background in photography, so like retouching photos and all that kind of thing. So I take those 2D images that I got from the 3D software, bring it into Photoshop, do a lot of digital painting and photo compositing in order to get the pictures that you see. I know I said a lot. but it's important. People have to realize that there are small steps along the way that you have to get wins with to get the big win. Yeah. So it was a long process, and I'd done like Black Sun Comics. There was a few iterations of it that happened beforehand that I wasn't happy with. So I had done, you know, again, things that I'm not going to tell anyone where it is, but things that I'd done before that were kind of there, but not quite. And the first version of Black Sun Comics actually came out in 2016. It premiered at the Black Speculative Arts Movement. It's run by Quentin Versetti. He's another guy you should have on your show anyway, but I'm on a tangent. That got a great reception, but I still wasn't happy with that, so I redid the whole thing again. And then I had a second version, and I still wasn't happy with that, and I redid that again. And the third iteration of it is what you see on our website now. That's the one that I feel confident about. That's the one that looks like what I was picturing in my head. So it was a long process to get the art looking the way that I wanted. And that just speaks to the art side. There's still the story that has to come along with it too. So I know I wanted to tell an epic story. So I started that, and then that's where Tugs comes in, because I needed to enlist his help to help write the story as well, because at the time I'd bitten off more than I could chew. So there's a lot. There's a whole lot that went into the process, like a whole lot of pre-thought. But I hope I didn't overwhelm you with too much stuff. No,
you know, I'm going to ask a question based on that. Have you documented that?
Yes and no. So on my YouTube channel, you know, as I was learning Daz Studio, I was like, you know what, other people could benefit from what I'm learning as well. So I put out these tutorial videos. So some of the major things that I've learned, I've documented through the tutorial videos that I put on my website. So it's documented in that sense. but a complete end-to-end process, no, that hasn't actually been documented. It's all kind of in here. Maybe
I'm gonna make a suggestion that going forward you do that.
Yeah, I probably should. That's a good suggestion.
Because you're taking your community along the journey with you.
This is true. This is true. I didn't even think about that, but you're right. Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm sure it will be paying it forward to other Black creators who want to do what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. This is true. This is true.
Just a suggestion. Just a suggestion.
Actually, on a side note, I do teach a comic book class. So there's Durham Black Educators.
All right.
And they enlisted me to teach. It's like a bunch of grade 5 and 6 students to teach the comic process to them. So I just did that yesterday. Yesterday was the second session, and the third session will be next week. So I am doing some teaching. So it's not all completely in my head.
You mentioned the comic process.
Yes.
And I'm going to be totally honest. I don't read comics. I see them, but obviously, in your opinion, from your lens, what is the comic process? Because there could be people watching this who want to get in and do what you're doing, other that are not in grade 5. But what is the comic process through your lens?
So there's a lot of steps. People think of comics as like a juvenile thing. It's just for kids. And it can be, but it doesn't have to be. So the process is coming up with your characters, right? The type of characters, their strengths and weaknesses. So you got to plan all that beforehand. You got to come up with your protagonist and your antagonist. And they have to make sense. So whatever weaknesses your protagonist has, your antagonist has to speak to the weaknesses that your hero has, right? That creates the conflict and makes an interesting story. Once you have your characters, then you have to decide on your plot, like what's going to happen in your story. And then you have to write that out in point form. And then that has to make sense. And then from there, you have to take your point form notes and turn that into a script, right? So panel 1, where is it taking place? Who's in the shot? What are they doing? Are they saying anything? Are there any sound effects? You got to plan all that out in your script. And then you got to do the artwork for that as well. So it's really a whole academic process for making a coherent story that will entertain people who read it. And not everyone realizes the amount of work that goes into it, because reading a comic
that's why I'm saying the documentation would be amazing. And also, I'm speaking one day, you're going to be doing master classes about this. No, I'm being very serious. I'm being very serious, because I'm appreciating what you're saying. Like, I'm not a comic head, but I'm appreciating the steps, the process that it takes. And I'm sure if people saw it visually, even getting snippets of when you're creating new content would be very cool.
Yeah. It really is an academic process, and there's a lot that goes into it that I don't think a lot of people actually realize. Because when you read a comic, it's pretty fast. Like, you can just kind of flip through and read it in a few minutes, maybe 10, 15 minutes, probably even shorter. You're like, oh, that's cool. And you're like, I just put 3 months of work into that.
Exactly. So let's focus on Black Sun Comics. What the launch? Like, what was the launch of it? Take us back to when it came and was shown to the world. Yeah.
So I was doing it. I had the idea in my head. I'm like, I made the decision that I'm going to put this out, but I really had no idea how. None. And I had my website up, and I was kind of promoting it a little bit. And it was funny. Quentin Versetti from Black Speculative Arts Movement had contacted me and said, your work looks really cool. We have this festival coming up in, I think it was October 2016. Would you like to come in and present, not present, like exhibit your work at the festival? And I was like, yeah, like, yes.
Of course.
Yeah, I'm there. It was, that seemed like the audience that would really gravitate towards what I was doing. So I printed up a small run. I think it was about 50 or 60 books, and I was very nervous. I was very nervous because I had no idea how people would react, none whatsoever. So I went there and I set up my table. I did it as nice as I could. And I was researching how to set up your table to make it look good and all that kind of stuff. And the event started and people gravitated towards it right away. I was blown away. I was so very thankful for that. And I left that day with maybe 3 books left. Like they sold. All of them sold. And I was like, yes, like, thank you.
Nice, nice.
I'm not saying that to brag, but
no, not
what
at all. No, it's not braggadocious at all. You said thank you because you took a leap of faith.
That's exactly what it was. I took a leap of faith, and I had no idea. And like I said, I was very nervous. Like I was sweating. Like people couldn't see that, but my heart was racing on the inside. And it was really validation for what I was doing because I had told a few people beforehand about what I was going to do. And then, you always get the haters. Of course. No one's going to read a comic book with all black folks. That's a stupid idea. You're not drawing it. You're not a real comic book artist. How dare you? It's blasphemy to use 3D models. And, I'd hear that kind of stuff. That's cheating. And I don't think so. I think people are going to like this, but I didn't know. But that event kind of validated the idea and said, okay, people are interested. Let me see how much further I can take this.
Nice. So you had the success at that show. What was your next step?
The next step was I looked at the book again and I hated it. This is an issue that I'm still dealing with. I tend to be a perfectionist when it comes to my work. So I'm very critical of what I put out. So I looked at the book and said, this is good, but I can do better. So I ended up redesigning the characters and redoing it. And I spoke to that earlier. And I started doing other like black focused pop-up shops, that kind of thing. And still received good reception, and it just kind of steadily kept on growing. And another pop-up shop was Black-owned Unity. They held a really good event where they gathered a bunch of Black-owned businesses in one spot and created like I guess like an impromptu mall, so people go there and shop. And we did really good at those events as well. And yeah, just step by step it grew. We would just do bigger and bigger shows. And then we did Toronto Comic Arts Festival. And that was my first show where it wasn't black focused. It was a mainstream event, so anyone could go. And again, I was nervous for that. How are people going to react to this? But the response again was amazing. People really gravitated to it. They liked the artwork. They liked the story. And yeah, part of, just on a little side note, usually when people come to the booth and purchase, I like to take their picture as my way of saying thanks, and also to show that people are interested in the type of thing that we do, right? It's not just a pipe dream, but people are actually willing to spend their hard-earned money on what it is that we do, and we're forever thankful for that. Yeah.
Nice. You've attended some. Actually, let's do it right now. Afrofuturism.
Yes.
Tell our audience what it is and why do you base your content on Afrofuturism?
Yes, excellent question. So if you go to Wikipedia and look up Afrofuturism, you're going to find a definition that's maybe about 5 or 6 paragraphs long. And it's written by academics, and academics, God bless them, but they speak like academics. So if you're a lay person reading that, what is this? I don't know what any of this means. What I like to say is that if you take the genres of science fiction or sci-fi and fantasy and create those genres from a black perspective, that's what Afrofuturism is in a nutshell. So it's like black science fiction or black speculative fiction, as sometimes people like to say. So it's science fiction and fantasy from a black perspective. So in Afrofuturism, the protagonist is always going to be a person of African descent, aka a black person, right? A melanated person. And it's always going to incorporate aspects of black history and politics into the narrative, and use that as a base for telling stories about mystical worlds or future worlds or, whatever the imagination can come up with. So yeah, science fiction and fantasy from a Black perspective, that's equals Afrofuturism.
Thank you for a great definition. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Just going back to the events that you attend as an exhibitor.
Yep.
What percentage content or what percentage of your audience that comes to your table look like us versus don't look like us?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I don't know.
It's okay.
It depends on the event. So when I'm doing like a Black-owned Unity event, the majority of the people there are Black folks. So that's all I see. And you get the odd person who's non-Black, who will come up and support, and that's fine too. But at Toronto Comic Arts Festival, for instance, that's a majority white audience, right? And they still support, right?
Congratulations.
So it's good. Like it doesn't really matter for what we do. I knew that Black folks would gravitate to it because they could see themselves represented in a way that you don't usually see. But non-Black folks gravitate to it as well. And I think that's partially because the narrative it's an alternative to what you see in mainstream, right? And that's what people like, and that's what people seek us out for specifically.
Right. Okay. That's good. You have a new series. I was taking a look at it called Black Sun, The Longest Night.
Yes.
What is that all about? I was looking at the covers and going, this looks real, man. This is on fire.
Yeah. So Black Sun, The Longest Night is it's about, okay, I'm gonna go full nerd on you here, so stay with me for a moment.
Let me drink my water. Sense. Okay, I'm gonna drink my water, get my energy. Okay, hold on. Okay, fire one.
So the story takes place in an alternate universe on a planet that is peaceful until one day these strange alien zombie-like creatures appear out of nowhere and immediately start destroying everything in their path.
Right.
No one knows who or what they are. No one knows where they come from. No one knows why they're doing what they're doing. But most importantly, no one knows how to stop them.
Right.
So the story follows a group of unlikely heroes who kind of have to learn to work together, figure things out, and hopefully save the day. And as you read each book, it's one story, but it's into different chapters. Each book is another chapter. You get to find out more about the society where they live, why the attack might be happening, who might be behind it, right? There's betrayal, intrigue, a bit of mystery, and a little bit of sci-fi horror in there as well. So it follows the main character, whose name is Yarrow. He's young. He's very powerful. The characters in Black Sun have supernatural abilities. He's very powerful, but he's also very immature. So he doesn't always make the best decisions. So it follows his growth as this invasion is happening, and he has to kind of learn how to step up to the plate and put his ego aside and do what he has to do in order to protect his homeworld. So that's the overarching story.
Where did the idea, or where did the influence come to create that content?
Because I've always liked zombie flicks, zombie movies. I've always liked that idea. I've always liked the idea of post-apocalyptic things as well. And then just the idea of alien invasion is very pertinent to people of African descent, right? That's something that we experience and still experience to this day. Some people pick it up after I tell them that. They go, "Oh, so are you talking about colonialism?" And it's like, well, there's aspects of it in there, yes, but it's not a direct allegory of colonialism. It's, if I was to do a direct allegory, it'd be very different than this series. So yeah, I guess that's where the idea came from.
Nice. And again, let's go back to our process. How long from the idea phase to the actuality phase did it take till it was like the first series was released? How long of a process was that?
2 years, I think. 2 years of thinking. like thinking and writing down and rewriting. Like when people say, "Oh, you're a good writer," and I'm like, not really. Like I'm a good rewriter. So I write something, and then I don't like it, and then I rewrite it again, and I don't like that, and I rewrite it again, and I rewrite it again until it's exactly what I want it to be. And then even at that point, I still have to enlist, tugs, to help figure out stuff, because the story is complex. There's a lot of moving pieces and parts and things that are related to each other. And in writing it, sometimes I forget those things. So Tugs will look and say, "Oh, okay, you know what? You didn't account for A, B, and C. We gotta do something about that." And then he would help fill in those parts. And sometimes dialogue I'm not so good at, so he can fill in the dialogue parts. So it's really that partnership. I'm good at world building and talking about the history of this alternate universe and some of the politics and the classes of people and what they do. I'm good at that aspect of it and the overall theme of the story, but he's good at filling in the dialogue and some of the details that are needed in order to make it real and relatable to people who read it. Yeah.
How did you and Tugs meet?
Oh my gosh, how did we meet?
I think you better not be watching this. He's going, you don't remember.
Oh my God, I think we met at African Canadian Heritage Association. I think that's what it was. I think we met through a mutual friend. Sure. I think Paul. Yeah. Paul Osborne. Paul, if you're watching, shout out Paul.
Paul Osborne,
the Ozjam fan. Yes. So I think we met through them, and we just started talking. And he's a poet. And I instantly recognized that he's a really great storyteller, and imaginative, in that he can just make stuff up and it makes sense. So when I was looking for someone to help, I was like, you know what, I think Tugs could do this. And I spoke to him about it, and he was sold immediately, right? Nice. He was like, okay, yeah, that sounds dope. Let's do this. And so we're like, yeah, cool. Let's make it work.
I know that you mentioned in the front end about the lack of colorism in this industry. What do you feel can be done to make the comic industry more colored, more of color per se?
Well, for myself, I think it's about specifically for Black creators to put out their own stuff, right? Tell stories from your perspective. I mean, 20 years ago, the idea of self-publishing a book was laughable, right? People, oh, you self-publish a book, they brush that off. And to a certain extent, people still do that today as well. I've experienced that too. But it's more viable. And if no one is willing to put out what you want, just do it yourself, right? And that's what it takes. So mainstream media is not going to stop doing what it's doing. I'm not really concerned with that. I think it's up to Black creators to put out the stories that they want to see, right? So we can represent ourselves and tell our own stories. And it's, and like I said, people seek us out specifically for that. That's why they come to us. I've had people of all races come to the booth and say, I have never seen anything like this before. Let me support, right?
Nice. How have the events of the last 2.5, 3 years impacted you as a comic book content creator?
It's been hard. It's been difficult, very, very difficult, because we sell mainly at comic book shows and pop-up shops. We sold a bit online, but I wasn't really too focused on that. People really like meeting us in person and having the experience of, talking to us and asking us questions and seeing the books and the pictures and all that kind of stuff. So when the show shut down, that took a big chunk out of everything. So, I had to kind of pivot towards online sales and learn about online marketing and advertising and that kind of stuff. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge learning that new skill set.
So that's one phase I wanted to share about, but also we've had a number of events over the last few years that, the George Floyds, et cetera.
Yep.
Has that had any impact on your content creation when you're doing your comics?
To be honest, if it did, it's not something that anyone made aware to me personally.
Right.
I'm sure it did. There's been more of a focus since the George Floyd murder. There's been more of a focus on what can we do to help Black folks out specifically.
Ah.
So maybe some of that has played into it. I don't know. People were supporting us before George Floyd, and to be honest, stuff like that has been happening way before George Floyd.
Exactly.
So George Floyd was the one that just happened to blow up and become a worldwide phenomenon, but it's always been going on, unfortunately. So yeah, I don't know if there was an effect. It wasn't made aware to me. Like, no one said, I'm buying this because I want to support George Floyd. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And piggybacking, a related question is, during your journey, how has the industry changed, if any?
So that's a good question. I haven't really been focusing on it. And it sounds weird coming from someone who creates comics. I've been so into doing what it is that we do that I don't really
pay attention.
I don't really pay attention to that stuff so much. So I know like in Marvel Comics, what they do is what's the term that they use? I forget the term, but if you're familiar with Nick Fury of S.H.I.E.L.D., in the comics, he was originally a white character. And then when they made the movies with the Avengers, Samuel L. Jackson became Nick Fury. Mm-hmm. And Samuel L. Jackson's a Black man, right? So there's some uproar about, well, Marvel's just trying to pander to a Black audience. They just keep taking these characters who were originally white and making them Black. And, Iron Man was a guy. Now she's a Black girl. And it's, all this stuff. So I'm aware of those things, but I don't really follow what they're doing because, they're going to do what they're going to do. And that's fine. I don't, I'm not hating. I'm able to do what we do here. And that's what people like. Yeah.
Can you share one or two key moments along the journey that have been significant? And may not necessarily be business-wise, but just a significant moment that's like one or two that really said, yeah.
Oh, actually, yeah. That's an easy question. I thought it was a hard question. It's an easy question.
Okay.
So the first one I already spoke to was at the Black Speculative Arts Movement. Partnering with them has been cool. They came out with a book that featured a bunch of Black Canadian Afrofuturist artists. My work was featured in that. And then CTV News, like we were recently featured on CTV News. And that was really cool because we got a whole bunch of messages from people across the country saying, oh, I saw you on CTV News and this is so cool. I love what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. So those were two pivotal moments, because I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that at all.
How did CTV News find out about you?
I didn't ask. I should have.
That's okay. You're so humble. It's wonderful.
I honestly should have asked, but I think he said he found me on Instagram. I think that's what he said. But he hit me up, and I thought it was a joke at first, right? Because I tend to get a lot of spam.
Yeah.
A lot of spam and a lot of troll comments and that sort of thing. So he said he was from CTV News and he wants to interview me. I'm like, yeah, well, whatever. And then he contacted me again on another platform and again on another platform.
Okay.
Like, is this someone trolling me like this hard? You're trolling me this hard? And then I looked and did some research. Like, oh, okay, this is legit. Let me get back.
You're funny. I love it. That's
so I got back and they came to the house and did the interview, and it turned out great. They did a really good piece.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, so those are two pretty cool moments.
Here's a comment here. Dolores saying, "Great job, Black Warriors, Survivalist, Black Canada TV show, news, cultural show, live stream, real talk, real life." So obviously, another person who loves what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
They love what
Thank you, Dolores.
doing.
Shout out Dolores.
Yes. What would you like to see? And I know you're very focused on the Black Sun comics. So what would you like to see with Black Canadians, Blacks in general, when advancing in this industry? Because it's a huge industry.
Yes, it is. So we actually have we're going to be working on an anthology coming out. Like it's in the planning phases.
Sure.
With some other comic artists that I've met through doing shows and just online, that sort of thing.
Sure.
And what we're looking at doing is an anthology that looks at what life for Black Canadians will look like in 250 years. Right?
Wow.
So that'd be a really good academic exercise to kind of project that far in the future and think about where do we want to be and what do we want life to look like for us as Black Canadians, right?
We need to have an offline conversation about that, because I know that there may be some documentary or film, Black Canadian film producers that would maybe be interested in a project such as that.
Yeah, I think that would be cool, because I don't think people always project that far into the future, right? Especially if you have a lot of struggles in your life. If you're struggling day to day, you don't have time to think about that kind of stuff. It's like, where's my next meal coming from? Some people live like that, but we also need to take the time to project into the future and see the type of life that we want to be living as Black Canadians, right? What's that really going to look like? Because once you imagine it, you can take steps today to make that future a reality, right?
Nice. Very, very, that's very interesting. 250. That's,
yeah.
That'd be a very interesting question to even just ask people on the street.
Exactly. It'll catch people off guard. They're like, "Oh, I didn't think about that." But now they got to sit and think about it, right?
Yeah. Got a comment here from Jason Das. "Keep up the great work, Kelvin. Your work inspires me as a fellow creative."
Jason, what's up? I know Jason from way back in the day.
What?
East 905 days. Yes.
Okay. This is good. What's the future vision for Black Sun Comics? You said anthology. Anything else that is a future vision at the time?
We would like to get like an animation, some sort of movie going, whether that be a TV show or a full-fledged movie. I don't know just yet, but something like that, and just building the universe and bringing more artists on. Once we have the infrastructure to accommodate that, then we certainly want to bring more artists on so that they can tell their stories as well. Yeah, so that's where we're headed. That's what we're looking at.
Okay, so that means you haven't pitched that idea to anyone yet. So you're still in the thinking stages.
Yeah, like I've spoken to a few people, like a very few people off and on, like offline, just about it, just to kind of see where people are at. And some people are like, man, other people are like, oh yeah, that sounds really cool. So we're just kind of in that phase right now.
Good. What's the biggest challenge for Black Sun Comics at the present time, or some of the biggest challenges?
More money.
I was going to think about that, because where does this guy get the money and time to do this? Okay.
More money. Just to be blunt, that's just the truth of it. Printing books is not cheap. Promoting them is not cheap. Hiring artists is not cheap. Getting people to write is not cheap. So more money so that we could expand it further.
Right.
Would be the major thing. So yeah, if there's some investors out there that like what we do, go check us out at blacksuncomics.com and hit me up.
Well, you're reading my alleged mind. Has any person or organization ever come and said, "I'd like to offer you this to buy you out"?
No, okay. Not yet. But I don't know if I necessarily want to be bought out. It depends. It depends. It depends. But my ears are open. Yeah, open ears. I'm listening.
Okay. All right. You hear people? You hear people? You hear people? As we start winding it down, what sort of call to action or words of inspiration could you give promising? Oh, hold on a second. There's a comment here from Ryan Knight, who is one of the head people, the African Canadian Business Network, is saying, I was going to guess that capital is key. Has he accessed any of the Black focus funding? Have you accessed any of it?
I've heard of some, but a lot of it, the criteria is very specific. So if Ryan Knight is able to educate me on what we could access, I am all ears.
All right.
But the ones that I've come across have been I don't meet the criteria. You have to be a certain age. You have to be in business for a certain long. Sometimes you have to have a brick and mortar store. Sometimes you don't. It's all very confusing. So if anyone can help me along that process, I'm listening.
Yeah, Ryan and myself can certainly. Ryan especially, he's in that space, especially with his organization. And I know there's at least one or two things out there that you could certainly apply for that would meet your criteria. And just to be brutally honest right now, if you're looking for funding as a Black Canadian, there's no better time than this right now.
Okay, gotcha. I will take that to heart. Absolutely.
So we'll certainly on a back channel get Ryan to meet you and have a conversation about that. He could certainly give you some clarity.
Yes.
When it comes to that.
Appreciate it.
And Ryan says he's happy to do so. So there you go. So
shout out, Ryan.
It's going to happen. Any words, final words of inspiration or thought to Black Canadians and Blacks who are wanting to make a dent in the comic industry?
This might sound negative, but it's really meant as a positive. And I kind of alluded to it earlier, but no matter what you do, people are going to hate it. Doesn't matter. If you're going into it trying to please everyone, that is the wrong thing to do.
Got it.
Make what you want, and guaranteed, if you like it, there's going to be at least 1,000 other people on the planet who will be super passionate about what it is that you're doing. Right? It may not be super famous, but people will support you if you really believe in what you're doing and you put your best foot forward and put out something that people can relate to, something that resonates with people. So you really just need to do it and not be afraid of the negative feedback, because it doesn't matter what you do. Your art can be the best, someone's going to hate it. Your art can be the worst, someone's still going to hate it. No matter what you do, someone's going to hate it. But at the same time, there's going to be a lot of people who love what you do. Focus on those folks and just do it. You have to get up off your backside and do it.
Yeah. Don't get good, get done.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And they don't make statues for critics. Right.
Hey,
so
that's a good point. That's excellent. I'm going to take that because it's so true.
Right.
It's so true.
And in the science field, motion causes friction.
Yep.
So all those things. Well, Kelvin, thank you for taking the time. I know we've been going back and forth for a few weeks. It was an amazing conversation from my end. I hope you enjoyed it also. Our producer, if you could put up the contact information for Black Sun Comics, the website, www.blacksuncomics. And then there's also another thing you can put up with the website. There we go. There's the website, and then everything else, Black Sun Comics.
Yep.
Real simple. Real simple. Well, look. Come back anytime. I will certainly make a point of introducing you to Ryan and you have that conversation about funding, because there are a lot of opportunities out there, and especially with the content that you create is so unique. There is definitely opportunities out there, because I don't know of any organization. I'm sure there are other ones out there in Canada, but you're the first one I've heard. And,
well, no one who does it as well as us.
And the man says he doesn't know about marketing. You see that? He knows a little bit about marketing. No one, you see that? He knows a little about marketing. He knows.
I gotta toot my horn a bit, right?
Well, you know what? If you don't, who's going to?
Yeah, this is true.
Right? Yeah. Well, look, pleasure to have the conversation. As always, as I say to everyone, remember to give yourself grace, and remember just don't not only to manage your time but your energy. Kelvin was fantastic. Can our producer just put up the contact information for Black Sin Comics again? That would be fantastic if you. Thank you so much. Excellent, excellent. Well, another epic conversation is done. It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show, the home of epic conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner, 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also host the only conversation in the world, online conversation in the world for dads and fathers, that's sponsored by Dove Men Care, and also DAD, Central Canada's national fatherhood organization. If you want to see more of Dr. Vibe, Monday and Friday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, I host a conversation, with Ryan Knight, and we call it the Morning Vibe, where we do a lot of stuff like this. We just showcase Black Canadians and Blacks around the world. So check us out. If you want, just follow the Dr. Vibe show on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, but especially YouTube and Facebook. You'll get updated the next time we go live. Other than that, I'd like to say thank you for watching. I close out with this as always. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions, then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. Remember to give yourselves grace. Also, thank you to BIA Media for a great production job. And finally, remember, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. We'll see you next week on Black Canada Talking. We'll have our roundtable because we do it bi-weekly with scheduled guests Elle Jones, Sarah Youngo, Cesar Nodima Musa, and Roger Dundas, co-founder and publisher of BuyBlacks.com, Canada's #1 Black Canadian online magazine. God bless, peace well, keep the faith, and walk good.